Departments tonight, our reporting would be Human Resources. Would be Michael. Is she on?
I'm here, thank you.
Hey, you are
Good
up.
evening, everybody. How are you?
Very good.
I just have a general resolution for the traditional retirement reporting.
Yes, the same one we do all the time, right?
You got it. That's it.
I'd move it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried.
All right. Thank you all very much. Have a nice evening.
Michael.
That's it. That's all I got.
All right, that's fine.
All right. Have a nice evening.
Tonight up. Deb?
Hello.
Are you there, Zeb?
Yes, I am.
All right,
Okay.
go ahead and read your resolution there.
We are here asking for renewal of our 3-year subscription for our Cisco Firepower with AnyConnect Plus and Defense Orchestrator for the ASA. Basically, that's our firewall, our VPN, and our security platform for writing out the policies.
Anybody have any questions? Need the motion?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
You're good to go, Zeb.
Thank you, everybody.
Any quicker? Oh, at least where'd she go? She was just up. No, she's not here.
Oh, we can go to Board of Elections.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want us to do Board of
You
Elections
want to go on,
first?
Kelly? Or Kelly?
Holly.
Go on, Ron.
Sorry, I was just on the phone with Brian. Let me call you right back, okay? All right. I mean, we can probably pick them up like 5:30. Okay. All right, sounds good. Thanks. Okay, bye. Sorry, Facilities Director. Hi, is it me? Yep, it's you.
You're up. Holly.
Okay, so I don't have any resolutions, but I just wanted to come and address the committee since this was the first one that we were able to attend in person and answer any questions, but we have been very busy in the DMV. I don't know how many transactions we have done. We haven't had time actually to put those numbers together since the shutdown and since the reopening, but I'm happy to report that things are running about as smoothly as they can be. The lines seem to be self-adjusting at this point. In fact, when I left, actually when I got there this morning, there was no line, and when I left to come here, there was no line. So, but they're still customers. They're just not lining up. So we were one of the few DMVs in the state to fully reopen and welcome everybody to be served. A lot of the other counties are not doing that yet. So we've been getting a lot of business from other counties, which is fine. So I didn't know if there's any questions or concerns.
Are you backed up pretty hard a lot of times or not really? You never know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, that first, I'm going to say right until last week almost, it was a good 2, 3, 4 hour wait. Yes.
Those lines around the block a couple times I went by,
Lines
you know?
around the block a couple of times. Yeah, it was very hot. Water, HPD handed out water. We shifted the lines a couple times before. But then when they were able to reopen, we moved the line to go back down the alley. The city of Hudson has been really, really good. Shout out to the mayor, Kamal, for his acceptance of what's going on. You know, they've been really good. HPD, the sheriff's office, facilities. We had distancing signs made. And so, yeah, it's, but again, it's kind of leveling out. Either we've waited on everybody in New York State who needed to be waited on, or other DMVs are kind of
Opening and it helps.
yeah, kind of opening up a little bit more. So that's helping.
Are they going to open it all around the state, you think? Pretty much,
No. So even though, you know, there was a lot of conflicting information about DMV offices, especially the clerk's office was kind of self-sufficient. It was not as troublesome because you don't have to go really in person. So it did go by phases. We reopened on June 15th, which then suddenly became phase 4. I doubt that like metro region, most of your state-run DMV offices are in the metro region, so they're not able to reopen because I don't think they're at phase 4 yet. I'm not sure where they are. The state DMV offices that have opened are doing like 4 transactions, very limited, some enforcement stuff, some license stuff. They're not doing permit tests. They're not doing any vehicle stuff. It's all still drop-offs. So some of the counties were doing drop, but we're not. We just dove right in.
Good.
So yeah, it's going well and bringing in some good revenue for the county.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah,
Be nice. Thank you, Holly.
yeah, you're welcome. So
I have a question.
Wait, question.
I have a question. I don't know if Holly can hear me through the
I
computer.
can.
Okay, great. I guess 2 questions that are somewhat related. I would imagine that you're more busy than you have been in past years in this moment, or at least in the past few weeks. How have you balanced the furlough with the increased traffic? And could you talk a little bit about some of the safety precautions and sort of the pain points of trying to keep your staff safe as well as the public safe with so much interaction going on?
Absolutely. Great question. So your first one, yeah, the furloughs are, I know I swore on the call this morning. I apologize. I won't swear, but they're a pain in the tuchus, the furloughs, but it is what it is. Everybody is doing them, myself included. I volunteered to do a furlough day, so we just work around it as best we can. That is part of the reason for the line backups at times. But again, it is what it is. So we do the best we can. I have been a motor vehicle cashier actually since the shutdown. I've been doing DMV work, so I go over and fill in a lot over in DMV. We were slow tonight, so that's why I'm here. So yeah, we're trying to meld it best so that everything is covered and some jobs, a lot of the staff, my deputy, Stacy Wendelkin, Missy Stever, and Courtney Wrigley are actually working extra hours to finish their jobs because they're also waiting on windows to make up for potential furlough complications, if you will. So hopefully that answered your question, Mike.
How did the extra hours work?
Well, it's they're
Like they're getting paid overtime to
punching
catch
out.
up?
Yep. But it's, DMV, I spoke with the chairman about it. DMV is very specific with revenue. There's jobs that have to be done each day in regards to revenue and reporting, batch work, batch audits, everything has to be accounted for, and that work has to be done no matter what. So it's been a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah.
Are there people who were on, I just want to stick with this for a second. Are there people who were on furlough who were also doing extra hours?
Well, not on their furlough day, no.
Okay.
No, they're not working on their furlough day, and by extra hours, I mean, they might be staying if I was doing shift work. So we were open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the first month. We're going back to the other hours, 9 to 5 and 6 o'clock on Thursdays, starting next week. So, my deputy is salaried, so she is like me. If you work 1 hour, you work 10 hours, you get paid for 7 hours. Hourly employees are people who are union employees, civil service employees. It's not hours and hours of extra work. It might be a half an hour. But if you're scheduled to work 8 to 4 and you're there till 4:30, that's a long day in DMV when you're constantly dealing with who don't have their forms, who don't know what they're doing, who, want to get in and out quick as they can, and they've waited in line for 2 hours and they don't have all their paperwork. So yeah, it's challenging. So believe me, I'm well aware of the budgetary constraints, Mike. We're not doing anything crazy with, no one's working overtime. Right. For sure. And then your other question about safety issues. So everyone's required to wear a mask who enters the building, the public. I just had a phone conversation actually today with Chairman Kanega. I will talk with the sergeant in charge of the sheriff's deputies. Apparently, there's sometimes the lines, and they're outside, we're inside. to see if the deputy can maybe check on the line outside to make sure that people are wearing masks if they're not socially distancing. But when they get to the door, if they don't have a mask, they are given a mask. The county provided us with masks, with the hand sanitizer. We have hand sanitizers at every station. Hand sanitizers, we established a new protocol. So now the door is locked. We let a certain number of people in at a time. And then you go to a initial wait station, a counter where your work is checked and we're figuring out what you're doing, and then you're directed where to go. If you're taking a permit test, you get your test there and you're directed to go sit at the table. So yeah, that's how that's working with the public. There is hand sanitizers at every station. I actually initiated a change with state DMV that will be implemented statewide on the MV44, the license form. We give eye tests to people who are renewing or getting a driver's license or a permit, and they would have to sign the form that said that we gave them the eye test. So I asked about that. It's not a law, it's a procedure, and it's going away because I said that's just extra contact, between customers, papers passing back and forth. I also mentioned on my last furlough day, I got to go to Lee and do some shopping because the Lee outlets are open, and a lot of their point of service devices are pretty much touchless. Like you enter your card and that's it. You don't have to sign anything. Our credit card devices that the state has are horrible, for lack of a better phrase. They did finally become functional now where you can touch your credit card to it. You can tap if you have that function, or Apple Pay or iPay. But otherwise, if you're inserting a card or swiping, you have to touch the screen and accept the charges, then you have to do something else, then you have to sign. So there's a lot of touching. So I've talked with the state about, are we gonna upgrade some of that equipment to alleviate a lot of the contact with the customer-facing devices. I did, however, talk with Brian McDonald, head of facilities, who gave us alcohol pads, the little ones. And so in between each use, we are wiping down that device for the customers. So we handle that way. In the clerk's office, they're 6 feet apart, so they're not masked. I know there's a lot of kerfluffle about masks in the clerk's office and the DMV. In the DMV, employees, some of the stations are not 6 feet apart. We're also training a couple of new employees, several of my staff, which are HIPAA regulations, and so I'm not allowed to discuss it, or it's not really allowed to be asked about, but they have come to me and said they have medical conditions that prevent them from wearing a mask, and so they're not wearing masks. But most of I'd say about half and half are wearing masks. I myself have my mask, it's right here. I love this little tube sock thing because you can pull it up and pull it down kind of quick. It's fun, so those are good. This is actually a veterans one, Gary. I got this at your Veterans Resource Fair.
Oh, great.
See that? Yeah, look, it's fun. We had a guy come in today like this with his mask. Yeah, you could just about see his eyes. It was funny. So hopefully that addressed your concerns, Mike. I apologize for, there's a lot to talk about in DMV. It is, it's probably the office in the county with the most people coming in and out of it every day. Facilities have been great. They send a crew in to clean. All the surfaces are cleaned daily. So we bought a bunch of extra pencils. People keep their pencils. We bought a lot of extra pens, the cheap Bics, nothing fancy, but if people don't have a pen and they need a form, they're writing with the pen, and they, here's your gift for your tax dollars at work, take the pen. So we are doing those kinds of things. Like I said, the hand sanitizer is there. So
I think Rick had a question.
Yep, Rick.
Yeah, Holly, some guy asked me a question that I thought was pretty interesting.
Yep.
He said, since we become very welcoming and invited all the people from the other counties, why can't they have a time where if you're from outside Columbia County, you can only enter 1 o'clock on, and give Columbia County residents the opportunity to stand in line from 8:30 to 1?
Yep, that's an interesting concept. We could investigate that further. We did start appointments for permit tests. So your CDL, your Class M, and your Class D license tests, written tests, are appointment only. And the upgrade to your licenses, so if you're going to Real ID or enhanced, I also let some people, if they question it and they're just renewing, but they're concerned about time or being around a lot of people to make an appointment. The appointment system works when it works. And when it doesn't, then you get a backup there too, a backlog. So that would be my one concern, is that either people wouldn't know that that was the rule and they'd show up anyway. But, you know, again, we can talk offline, and I can talk with my supervisor about doing something like that. We've actually seen, again, a slight decrease this week. There's more Columbia County people than less out of county people, but most of it honestly is permits, because Westchester, Rockland, some Putnam County residents, they are not open and not able to take their permit tests. So that's where the majority are coming from. Some New York City residents, and that is appointment based. So it's, you know, if you get online and make your appointment, you know, no matter where you're from, you're there. Dutchess County is the most county that we're getting people from for registration stuff, because Brad is still doing Dropbox only, and people don't want to wait weeks to get license plates. I hear that comment a lot. So yeah, but we can certainly take a look at it, Rick. Thank you for the suggestion.
Anybody?
Other questions?
Okay, I think that's it.
Thanks, everybody. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Hey, Holly, I have a question.
Hi,
Holly.
Linda.
Hey, when you say permit, what kind of permit?
So that is the Class D, which is your regular license, Class M, which is motorcycle, and anything related to your commercial driver's license, which is a hazmat, a truck endorsement, tanker endorsements, anything related with taking a CDL permit test. Those are all appointment-based tests.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And just, I should mention, I'm in talks with Brian McCormick about making the county website, at least in regards to my stuff, bilingual at least, so that that appointment system is, I did look for a bilingual appointment system, and it was a really short time frame, and I wasn't having much luck finding one. But we have been in communication about that.
That's great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, Holly, thank you.
Thanks again. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Sort
Have
of.
a good night. Okay, Board of Elections, Kelly Simmons and Ken Dow. Are they both on?
I don't know.
It's Ken.
I can.
Hi, I think Kelly's on too.
Yep, she is. I've got your first resolution pulled up, Ken. I don't know if you can see the screen.
I'm actually on the phone, so I can't. But
So it's the approval to accept the New York State HAVA CARES grant.
Want to explain anything on it? Just a grant?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, these are things that came in, you know, to get us through this primary, and so, you know, we addressed what we were doing with it for the most part, and I think in the past. Kelly, maybe if Kelly's on and can see it, she probably elaborate a little more.
She's on, but I don't know if she's.
Well, I can read it for you if you want, Ken. I mean,
Okay.
basically, the approval to accept the HAVA CARES grant in the amount of $90,123.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Yes, that was
Yeah.
a federal grant. It was money that was designated to be put to use to, you know, all the kinds of things that we would need to do to get through the election, you know, because of the COVID situation. And, you know, we use that for a variety of things. Most significantly, biggest chunk of it, I think, went for the clear ballot, the scanning and tabulating technology that let us, you know, scan 7,000 ballots really, really quickly without having to bring in teams of people. We had mail-ins. There was money coming from the state and the federal things. So, but there was also, as you know, a lot of costs involved with mailing. We had a mandatory mailing to all the enrolled Democrats and Republicans for absentee applications, postpaid return envelopes, ballots had to go out and come back with postpaid. there were a whole bunch of things that were related to this, but that's what that was all about. There was all kinds of funding to help boards of elections deal with the additional costs and burdens. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. So that's what those are.
Money too, so that would help definitely. So, any other questions on it?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Hold on, I'm gonna try to get Kelly on. And hold on 1 minute, I'm gonna try to get Kelly on with us too.
Okay.
She's having trouble getting access, so just bear with us a minute.
Hello?
Kelly, you're on?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, just so you know, you guys are both on now. Okay, so we're up to the second resolution. Approval to accept aid to locations grant, $68,112.
So that was a grant that I actually was just finishing up when Ken first got there, and I just didn't know that I needed to do a resolution to accept it. So that was my mistake. So we actually have already started to get reimbursed for that grant. That grant is paying for our new printer.
So do they need a resolution on this? Yeah.
That's fine.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
We approve it then.
All right.
That'd be a good thing.
Need a second? I'll
I'll
take
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I would like to leave,
They're not leaving. Hold on, they still have a
or
report.
something else going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kel, we have a letter pulled up. Did you want to touch base on that, or Ken?
So why don't you go ahead, Ken? I can't see it.
He can't either. He's dialed.
That's
Oh,
okay. I mean,
okay.
I just it was just a quick recap of some of the essential points. So the volume of things that we had come in and to deal with. On the whole, I think the reports were really favorable positive about the way the election went. Everything was being done kind of on the fly, and the ground kept shifting as we were told we were going to do this, and then we weren't going to do this. And the presidential primary was canceled, then it was restored, and so there's a lot of reactive stuff to deal with it. But in the end, it came off pretty well. We were really pleased to be able to turn around that kind of volume. There's an awful lot of stuff that came in a very short period of time. That's just the nature of it. The applications, that had to be sent out, returned, turned around, and as I mentioned, we mentioned in a letter, we really, really appreciate the help we got from the county in so many ways. We felt there was a lot of support from the county government, both as a body and people individually, coming in and helping us get this stuff done. But also, one thing I think I just mentioned, but we learned really, really valuable information because we tracked what we did and how long it took to do. And so if we're in a position where we're going to have to go through something like this again in the general election, which certainly seems reasonably likely, we have really good information about how much time and labor and different, capabilities we need to have in place. And, for example, we know that processing the applications takes a little over 3 minutes per application. When they come in, they have to be entered in the system, process, and things that don't seem like they amount to much add up to a lot when you have to do thousands and thousands and thousands. Like just opening the envelopes alone is hours and hours and hours of work. And then they're processed, ballots are printed, labels are printed, there's all folded, all kinds of these things. But it ends up being a little over 3 minutes a piece. So for the 7,000 or so, well, actually 9,800, sorry, it was about work or more, packed into about 3 weeks of time. And we don't have staff for that. Fortunately, the staff did a large part of it, but we also had a huge amount of help, stuff in the envelope, that we could do 250, and a team of 2 people and 250 envelopes an hour. The processing takes about a minute and a quarter.
Ken, you should let everyone know that that's only if they have Kelly Picaro on their team.
That is true.
Funny.
Kelly actually runs that up a significant amount. She's like lightning, but anyway, but also it's something we're going to have. I think it's worth bringing to everyone's attention right now. We don't know obviously what's happening in November, but if we're in a position like this again, the processing is the single most time-consuming part, and it happens in about a 3-week time. If we were to do this on the scale of a general election, it probably would require about 2,000 hours of labor packed into a 3-week period. That's 100 hours a day of employee labor time dedicated to nothing but turning those absentees around. So that's a dozen people working full time for 3 weeks just to turn those things around. So we would have to be looking at workstations, temporary personnel, because there's otherwise no way to get those things out. So, we're just want to bring it to your attention. It's a few months away, but we know. But my point is, we actually have really good information that we really did and analyzed to know what's going to be involved, how much work has to be done, in what time period to do this. So it's not going to be easy, but at least we had the experience of going through it in this capacity, so we understand what's ahead of us.
So Ken, are you saying that you'll have a plan all set in motion for us by the fall, we hope? An idea of what needs to be done, yeah. Where you need help.
We will. We have a pretty good idea. We don't obviously, and we don't know what we're going to be told to do yet. We can certainly, we'll have a contingency plan saying, assuming we're going to be told to do the similar kind of thing, this is what we're going to need and when, and we'll have to think, look at different possible scenarios, but it's incredibly valuable to go through it on the scale of a primary, which is no small thing, but it is considerably smaller than a general. So, we know it's going to be a real challenging endeavor, but at least we have some good information about it.
Right.
So we'll be back to you with more detail about that, quite soon.
Well, I'd like to say you both did a great job compared to what it was last year. So I fantastic. And you seem like you got well organized into this thing. So whatever we can do for you to help, just let us know.
Well, thank you. We do feel that we got a lot of support.
Yeah, I also would like to say that all the employees really stepped up. Ron and Ravonda had to run 2 elections simultaneously, and JJ and Aaron, they take care of all the programming of the iPads, and it was challenging, and it did keep changing, and then we also had to condense poll sites, so that threw another challenge into it, and we couldn't have asked for any better outcome. They all did a really, really great job.
Well, again, thank you. I think you did great. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Michael Shamidas. Could you just go over, I know that oftentimes in elections of this scale, there's always going to be some problems and some mistakes that might not jeopardize the integrity of the election, but are still sort of unfortunate for individual voters. I was wondering if you could sort of report on anything like that may have happened on this election, stuff like running out of ballots at a poll site or running out of affidavits at a poll site, or people getting turned away when maybe they shouldn't have? I don't know if you have any sort of anecdotal information about that and about how we can improve for future elections.
There were
really
really small number. It was very smooth. We had one in Canaan. A machine was delivered. The key to open it was actually, I think it had fallen off the hook. They thought that the key wasn't in it. But it apparently had fallen off. So they weren't able to open up the machine immediately. Someone was dispatched right away. I know that they weren't able to open it at 6 a.m. I'm not sure how long it took, but there was a little glitch with one machine like that. There was an incident between a couple of poll workers there were some issues about mask wearing that was not ideal. Otherwise the volume of the traffic was really manageable for the most part. And we projected the stuff and actually really accurately based on history. So when we did consolidate, we knew where the volume would be heaviest, and that the actual performance tracked almost exactly. A little heavier than we predicted, but we had that set out. So, at Chatham and Kinderhook, which we knew would be the two busiest places with the most consolidation, we use the on-demand printers. So that really helped, because what that means is instead of having a lot of different kinds of ballots, like if your place had 4 election districts in it, you had the Republican primary and the Democratic primary going on, you had 8 different ballots on the table in addition to affidavits. So there's a lot of paper, but in the busiest ones, although we did have packets there as backups, we didn't use them. When the person signed in, the correct ballot for their party and election district popped out of the machine on demand. And so that was really, people loved that. So that really helps smooth things out. I think people were trying to keep very low numbers of people in the polling place at any given time. I think there were momentary, just by random flow, occasionally, a handful of people would show up within a few minutes of each other, and a couple people would wait for a couple minutes. But I mean, there was no meaningful delays. Really, it was very smooth for the most part.
If I could just jump in here for a second, I've been working with these folks in the Board of Elections for a few months now, and we're still up against some new challenges. This is only the second year that we've had early voting, and on top of that, you had COVID, and you also had absentee ballots. So you had a couple of extra really huge hurdles put in the way. And we knew going in January, before that kind of stuff unfolded, that this primary was going to be a real test, and it was going to let us know how prepared we were going to be for the fall. And I give them an A, for all that they got done. And Ken and Kelly, my hat's off to you, both of you, for looking at this, the bigger picture, the number of minutes that it takes, so that we can be better prepared in November. For this. So again, my hat's off to you. I give you an A.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Really
much.
appreciate that.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you both.
We're going to go up to the county attorney. Rob Fitzsimmons is up next.
Good evening, everybody. I have 3 items for tonight. As everybody knows, we have additional taxes that we impose, and we have to do that by authorization from the state legislature. Those taxes are our additional mortgage tax on mortgages filed in Columbia County. That amounts to 50 cents per thousand of value of the mortgage that goes into the Columbia County coffers. That mortgage tax last year, I got numbers from Ron and PJ, yielded an amount of $3,103,000 to the county. We also have a transfer tax that's like a deed tax, and that is $2 per 1,000 of value. And last year that brought in $597,000 of value to the county. Additionally, we have a sales tax. And as you know, the sales tax on purchases in Columbia County is 8%. Of the 8%, the state keeps 4% and we get 4%. The base authorization for sales tax is 3%. That's why some counties have a 7% overall sales tax. We get authorization to impose the additional 1%, which gets us to the 8% overall sales tax. And that brings in $44,442 as of last year. In total, our 1% add-on by this piece of legislation is about 2.8 million, Ron and PJ report. Each one of these tax extenders, the state legislature authorizes, but they always put in a sunset provision. It's usually 2 years, sometimes 3 years. We've actually synced these up so they all expire at the same time. When COVID broke out, we were beginning our process of asking our senators and assembly people to move forward with the home rule requests required to get the Senate and Assembly to sponsor these bills. As some of the supervisors that have been on for a few years, we did this last in 2017, and that one became a nail biter whether the governor was going to sign them or not. And luckily, with the New York State Associations of Counties, Steve Aquario, pushing during this COVID period, the state legislature passed an emergency bill authorizing all tax extenders for all counties, no new taxes, but authorizations of existing taxes. So that's what you have before you. Two of them, the mortgage tax and transfer tax, have to be passed by the adoption of a public hearing and a local law. And we're going to set that for the August full board meeting. The sales tax, our enabling legislation lets us do that by resolution. That's been drafted and submitted to the New York State Tax Department. They review it line by line, and they have approved that as well. All I'm looking for is to answer any questions you may have, and just a motion to submit these for full board review at the August meeting.
I just want to make sure I understood correctly. You're saying that we don't have to bring these resolutions to the New York State Legislature, that's already done?
That's been done, yeah.
Okay.
Normally our process is we would have a 3-step process where we would ask for a home rule request authorization. And then after the Senate and Assembly issued bill numbers, then we would actually pass a resolution supporting those bill numbers. And then we would write letters asking all the Senator and Assembly people to pass them. They expedited the process during the COVID outbreak early on in March, April, and they just passed a state law that said all tax extenders for counties get to go forward.
So I could see that for this year, we wouldn't want to do this because it's already been, the status quo has already been extended, but have we talked about increasing something like the transfer tax, which seems like something that wouldn't really harm residents, but would bring in some more revenue?
Yeah, we would have to actually do it in the next cycle, but that's something that can be docketed because our request for authorization would have to include an increase. And we were told before COVID, we were actually warned that the state didn't have the palate to do any increases or any new taxes. So it's always a challenge, but that's definitely something we could explore for future years, depending on how the New York State economy is.
2 years.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'll second, Patsy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And then just as a quick update, I coordinated with Chris Watts. As you know, our tax foreclosures have been stayed by government executive orders. Our round of 2016 delinquent taxes was ready to be filed and served, but that has been put on hold. PJ reported, I believe, at a full board meeting that he would like to get those moving again. What will happen is we'll update the title searches and redocket those when it's clear of the COVID restrictions. Also, PJ in the interim wanted to do what he calls the kick in the pants letter, where a letter is written to any delinquent taxpayer with 3 years or more taxes due, reminding them that they still have to pay their property taxes. PJ has concerned during a budget shortfall due to the COVID that the tax receivables has slipped in a downward trend. So he hopes that my office is reading that letter will help to get some collected monies in. That's just an update.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Great, Rob. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
We have veterans.
Hello, everybody.
Can you
Thank
please
you.
mute your devices?
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Veterans have been operational all the way through. We've been doing everything by computer, phone numbers, phone calls. I was able to give you a picture of June and July of new cases submitted for comp and pension, 46, and there were 6 more I did this week by computer to the VA. Rated, I've had 22 comp cases come back. Of those, 11 were in Blue Water Navy, law that went into effect on January 1st. The average compensation, which I put down, that $2,816 is a month per month. I had one comp case of a Vietnam vet that went all the way back to 1969, and it was a Hudson resident who received $267,000 in retro pay. And the interesting part of that is he was living in low-income housing, and I've had both he and his wife on 2 different calls, and they're absolutely ecstatic and looking for a house to buy.
I can imagine.
And the other one, at $149,000, those are the 2 biggest ones I've gotten back so far. But the VA has been very responsive in rating Blue Water Navy cases. I have 3 widow pensions that were approved. I've had 11 veterans die since the COVID started, none by COVID, but most of them were Vietnam vets. Registration of 17 new hospital registrations at the VA. And just FYI, we're making trips up to the VA as necessary, but they're still not open for appointments. And they had a health worker working in an employee working in a cafeteria snuck through the system without screening, and she had the infection. So they've now backed off a lot. I go in every Sunday, I have since it started, and call my veterans, particularly the ones with PTSD, the widows that are alone. And I made 417 phone calls as of July 5th. During those, I've had one veteran who had said, "I'm glad you called." This was early on. He said, "I was thinking of suicide. I called the VA hotline. They put me through the voicemail." And I now have him into VA treatment program by phone, and also enrolled in the horse therapy program out at High and Mighty. And they just started opening up this week. So I've got 9 people out there now. And that's really working well. I had one Vietnam vet that's been in VA counseling for 16 years. He went to 7 sessions before they closed down at the ranch, came into the office and said, "Listen, just going out there with the horses has done more for me than all the years I was in the VA counseling program." So animal therapy is really important to some of these people. I've had one person came down with a virus, and he's now in and out of the hospital doing well. And I had one domestic violence case, and Judge Mapp called me and referred it to me. I got Judge Nichols involved, and we did a protective order, and I got him into the VA also for treatment. And so I stay in touch with him all the time. The other 2 issues that I want to mention is one of my drivers, which I cleared with the chairman of the board, and 3 of my Dwyer mentors picked up 60 comfort baskets from the Veterans Miracle Center in Albany, and we're delivering them to our veterans that were shut in. And 2 weeks ago, I sat down and met with a heating and air conditioning company headed up by a veteran, Air Force veteran, and they've agreed as they take good units out of somebody's house to replace them with upgraded units, they're going to donate anything that's salvageable to our veterans. And right now I have 4 veterans of them. Any questions?
I got to, just to tell you a quick, I have a veteran who's my best friend, Vietnam vet, flew into Vietnam with, he was a Navy, highest rank you'd get for boarding cargo on a plane. And anyway, long story short, he walked out a year and a half ago and we never heard from him again.
Really?
Yeah, just walked out. He's in California and his family and everything. Just all of a sudden, he just disappeared one day and they don't know what happened to him.
Wow.
He was in that part of being depressed. He wasn't getting the stuff he was supposed to get in bed and everything like that. And the next thing you know, he's just gone. You know, so I've lived that. I know what it's like to deal with and stuff like that. It's a very heartbreaking thing for these guys that what they had to go through and how they were treated. So
Well, I take everything personal. I was talking to a vet.
you cannot. I mean, you got to.
I had a veteran in today I talked to. He and I were comparing notes, and we both felt that when we got home, the way we were treated after we came out of Vietnam, we wished we were back in the jungles.
Yeah, yeah.
It was that bad.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much, Sergeant Major.
Yeah, we're staying.
Anybody have any questions for Sergeant Major? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have fair housing. Phil.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone safe and here this evening. As I pointed out in my June report, which I hope most of you had an opportunity to see, there were certain things that we had to cancel and postpone that we normally do every year. And those things were our tenants' rights form and also the fair housing poster contest. But in this report, what I'm trying to do and hoping to do is to point out to the committee the number of steps that have been taken to help those who have been affected financially by the COVID-19, particularly when it comes to their rent payments and also their mortgage payments. So I've outlined chronologically here a number of steps that both the federal government and the state government by executive order have tried to do to provide some relief to tenants and to mortgagors who are experiencing difficulties with their payments. Number one, you can see the CARES Act dealt mainly with foreclosures and put a moratorium on those. They particularly speak of those loans that are federally backed mortgages, and they would normally be your VA, your FHA, however, they do also include mortgages that were sold or assigned to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So if anybody has a mortgage where their original lender has assigned that mortgage to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, they are entitled to that same relief that and come under the federally backed mortgage category. If the mortgage is not federally backed and let's say the lender still has that mortgage on its shelf or in-house, they should still talk to their lender to see what options may be available with regard to any kind of forbearance arrangements that might be available to them, like waiving the interest, late payments, or late charges, also deferring payments. With the federally backed mortgages, you can see that the forbearance arrangements can be quite long there. You're talking about the first 180 days, and if things are not resolved in the first 180 days, the mortgagor could apply for another 180-day extension. One of the options may be to add the payments that are in arrears onto the end of the loan, which would really give the borrower really a good financial opportunity. So basically, that did come under the CARES Act. And then you can see that on March the 20th, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order which put a ban or a moratorium on any evictions through June the 20th. That applied to almost everyone, that eviction moratorium. However, when he extended the eviction moratorium through August the 20th, it only applied to those who could prove that they were financially impacted by COVID-19 or were on unemployment. So, and during that period of time, the landlords still have to go ahead and provide the normal things that a tenant is entitled to, and those would be repairs, warranty of habitability, which would be to give them safe and safe and healthy conditions in their apartment. So the landlord still has to do that, even though they may not be getting paid. The CARES Act then protected renters. That would be number 3. And you can see the renters that are protected, and it's any loans, again, that, as you can see, are federally backed, and I listed what would be covered on that. Then on May the 7th, I pretty much covered that already, but the extension there by executive order that went through through August the 20th, that again only applies to those who have experienced and can prove actually that they've experienced financial hardship and are on unemployment. Then in number 5, this is sort of the catch-all thing. Governor Cuomo signed in an order called the Tenant Safe Harbor Act, which basically means that any payments that a tenant might owe from March the 7th, when we went into a state of emergency, through the time when the county will open up all its non-essential services. A landlord cannot, or a mortgagor cannot, or mortgagee cannot sue the individual for that period of time. It's important to know, though, that any of these things that provide some financial relief to the borrower or to the tenant is not a waiving of any monies that's owed. Under the Safe Harbor Act, a landlord could sue in small claims court, or however big the amount might be, for money owed, take an action against the borrower or the tenant. And is the actually the tenant or so. One other thing I might bring up that I don't have on here is that there is a program now that has gone through New York State under the Division of Housing and Community Renewal. It is money that was allocated by the federal government but administered by the state. And this would or could provide financial aid in the way of a grant to a borrower, or to a tenant, I should say, to a tenant who has experienced financial difficulty as a result of the virus, is below 80% of the median income adjusted by family size. And the amount that they could apply for or might be able to get directly paid to the landlord would be 125% of the fair market rent in the area. So it may not necessarily be the rent due the landlord, but it could be up to 125% of the fair market rent in the area. So, and that is administered through the DHCR, Division of Housing and Community Renewal. And there is a number that I can provide for a tenant to call to apply for that.
We should probably put that on our website, so if you want to send it to me. Okay.
Any supervisors have any questions?
Yeah, I think kind of going off of what Kelly was implying is, I think during the last few months, the renter rights have been shifting around so rapidly. What are you doing, or with your board, and or what can the board of supervisors do to help get this information out to people? I think like this presentation is really helpful, but I also think it's dense and complicated. Like, how can we get sort of like the key bullet points that people who need it most can get?
Yes, Michael, I was working on something. I haven't completed it yet, but I want to get something on the county website from the Fair Housing Office that would give this information out, give some telephone numbers for residents to call for any kind of assistance that may be available through any of these things. I think it's very important too to get back to a renting situation where it's very important. Communication is key, I feel, between the landlord and the tenant as to where the tenant stands financially, whether they can pay anything, because at the end of this whole thing, and let's pray that it's soon, that money is still going to be owed. So anything that can be paid now, I'm thinking of people on unemployment. Normally we try to pay 30% of our income for rent or mortgage payments. And so if a tenant is on unemployment, or even a homeowner is on unemployment, that 30% of that, whatever it is, of that unemployment benefit could be used to let's say, at least curtail some of the money that's owed at the end of the ban on either the foreclosures or the tenants' rent.
Many of them are getting more than their base pay right now.
So if you're getting unemployment, you should be paying your rent.
That's true, very true. I think there are some people who are taking advantage of this this thing. I have at least 2 landlords who are having difficulty removing undesirable tenants because they know the law.
Right.
They know the law. So.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. The second bill is up. Bill Better, our historian.
Thanks, Supervisor Weigott. I was here 2 months ago, and I started a discussion about what I believe to be a need for the creation of some entity that can be a vehicle for receiving grants, receiving donations for the benefit of historical related expenses in this county. The impetus initially was my desire to see something done with the Claremont Chapel that the county has owned since, well over 20 years now. And in today's economic conditions, I think it's spending money down there is probably on something of a low priority. and will be for the foreseeable future. But as I appreciate everyone's efforts 2 months ago talking about different options and different vehicles that people had ideas, and I'm familiar with all of them. I do a fair amount of nonprofit work, and at the suggestion of some of the folks at the committee, I did a little inquiry about the Historical Society, the County Historical Society. Their staffing is down significantly. They don't have a lot of manpower, and I was provided some anecdotal information about one town that tried to utilize things there and it didn't work out. And then I want to share with you a communication that I received from Tom Shannon, who is the historian for the town of Germantown. And I'll just read you a small excerpt. I know it's getting late. Tom had contacted me because they have a building down there. It's the old parsonage in Germantown. It's quite an old structure. And I'll read you this paragraph. In Germantown, we have an immediate need for such an entity, to the point I was about to create one strictly for our own town's history department. We have a donor willing to make a $2,000 donation for projects at the old Reformed parsonage. Unfortunately, the donor cannot donate straight to the town because of tax concerns, and our local Parks Commission and library 501c3s are unwilling to get involved because it does not align with their mission statements. Those are the kinds of issues that we're going to come up with if we try to piggyback off some other existing entity. What I propose is that we create a 501c3, call it the Friends of Columbia County History, and we act as a conduit for organizations or other entities such as the Town of Germantown Historian, so they can receive benefits and then in turn turn the money over to the Town of Germantown, and the donor gets the benefit of the 501c3. There's one entity countywide. We don't need 20 or 10 or 5 or 3. It is not hard to set these up. I've done it regularly in my practice. Supervisor Flaherty just mentioned the fact that he has a number of veterans that go to High and Mighty, which is a therapeutic writing center in Ghent. I did that nonprofit. I did their application to the Internal Revenue Service for nonprofit status. I got them both. I'm happy to take out of my pocket the filing fees. They're not that large. I just want to get this done and going if we can reach some consensus. I then got a communication from the supervisor from Germantown who indicated that he'd like to discuss this. I talked to the county attorney. I know there's some concerns about the continued existence of these entities and the annual requirements. It's not that hard once you get them set up and just do it. We have in this county a tobacco securitization corporation, which to the best of my knowledge has been in existence for a little over 20 years. And it was used in connection with some tobacco settlement money back from the late 1990s, early 2000s. I firmly believe that the county treasurer or comptroller can arrange for the filing fees of the annual reports for the New York State Attorney General and or the IRS. I'm happy to do it myself. I've done them for people. So, and entities rather. So I would like to suggest that conceptually the county have one countywide nonprofit that in turn towns like Germantown could look to as a vehicle for accepting donations. And there's a lot of questions that would have to be answered, like who would be on the board. My suggestion would be obviously an odd number of members of people who are county officials, chairman of the board, majority leader, minority leader, treasurer, historian, county attorney, maybe the chairman of the county government committee. So it's all run by county officials, and that's, you know, it would have to, they would receive the monies and in turn turn it over to whatever the recipient was. It saves having multiple organizations, which I don't believe is a particularly efficient method of delivering the donation from the donor to the recipient. That to me, in my experience of dealing with foundations and nonprofits and trusts, that is the simplest, plain vanilla, most inexpensive way of doing this. You know, so I kind of like to have that dialogue a little bit.
I would, if I could, this is Supervisor Bury. I had the conversation with Bill about this, and then last month or 2 months ago, I was a little reluctant to form a 501c3 for the county. I think it should be something that we should consider and maybe vote on next month. I think that maybe we should find out from these other, from Ron and from PJ, what their concerns are, see if we could address them between now and the next meeting. Just so that folks know, I also spoke to Tom Shannon, our historian. The accountant for the donor said that you can't deduct a contribution to a town. He's wrong. I have a letter from the IRS. It is very clear that an entity that's exempt under 501A of the Internal Revenue Code, including municipalities, can deduct, anybody that donates to the municipality can deduct those contributions under Section 170 of the Internal Revenue Code. It's clear. But a lot of folks, a lot of charities have in their bylaws that they can't contribute to anything other than a 501c3. That's the holdup here. So that donor can contribute to the town, but their bylaws don't let them do that. So that's why we're faced with this sort of a dilemma. Well, people want to contribute money. Sometimes you can't disabuse them of the idea that they can't deduct it, whatever. But I think going forward with the 501c3 might be the only remedy to take.
I would share with your assessment about giving things directly to a town. The current Town of Kinderhook Highway Garage was donated to the Town of Kinderhook in 1985. I was a participant in that transaction. And but I will tell you that was one of the concerns that the donor at that time had about that conveyance, and a great deal of time was spent giving him the level of comfort that he wanted. I think the problem that happens is people, especially tax professionals, are much more comfortable advising their clients who are about to make donations who do make donations, that having a 501c3 with a piece of paper from the Internal Revenue Services that this is what this entity is for, and it's got this tax exempt designation, makes everybody feel a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill, and I don't want to drag this out too far. I had a situation last year where someone wanted to donate $25,000 to the town to upgrade one of our cemeteries. And his CPA said, you can't donate money to a town. Well, I sent them a copy of the letter that I have from the IRS directed to the town of Germantown. It says that you can. And only after the CPA got that letter did he say, oh, okay, you can do it and you can deduct it.
May I make a suggestion for the August meeting? And I will circulate in advance. I'll reach out to PJ and Ron and Rob Fitzsimmons. So what I was hoping to accomplish tonight was he'd say, okay, Bill, we're willing to take a look at this in a very specific fashion. And then at the August meeting, have like a clear outline of what our choices would be. And I'll send it to you in advance in like a memo form. Discuss this with the other people that would be involved with it or be able to chime in and get their opinions about it. And then make a decision at the August meeting about whether to move forward.
Bill, can I ask you too quickly, we operate a small, somewhat of a group like this in Stuyvesant to do work on that train station down there. So we've been running that money through Open Space Institute at about an 8%, fee that we pay them. But one of the opportunities, and I don't know if that would exist here if a county had one, but one of the goals there is also that if you raise $2,000 or $3,000, that board or committee can then spend it without following all the procurement rules of the town as well too. Right. Or there's a different set of procurement rules, so that they can hire a contractor without prevailing wage. Right. Would that work in this case
it depends on where you're doing the work. You can do things like that. Like as I recall, because I was involved in that train station acquisition back in the early mid-80s myself. And I will tell you that's property of the town of Stuyvesant. I think if there's any work done on that, you really need to pay prevailing wages. Okay. But if they're doing other things, and I'll give you an example, and Holly was here, but she had to run. sitting in the historian's office are a set of maps that were prepared in the 1830s and the 1840s of Chancellor Livingston's property in the southern part of this county. They are stunning. They're colored, they're hand colored, the detail, the script, and they are folded in a huge portfolio that's about 4 foot by 4 foot. These maps are probably 8 foot by 5 foot. And they're mounted, they're affixed to canvas. And they need to be conserved. And it will cost a couple $1,000s to conserve them, to reaffix them to the canvas. They should be laid out flat, they should be framed, and they should be mounted some way because they are deteriorating. In today's climate, I don't see anybody come say, do you have $5,000 or $10,000 over a couple year period to spend on this? And I mean, hierarchy of things that we're spending money on in today's difficult climate. If you had some entity like this, they could receive grants. There are a variety of sources for people that conserve documents like that. The Archives Association. You go to them and say, this is our entity, they're going to pay for this, and then you send it out to a conservator, and there are a number in the area that do this stuff. I am an elder at the Cloverwick Dutch Reformed Church. We have all our papers from the 1780s, and we make some of them available, we duplicate them, but it has to be done by a person who has the appropriate training.
And so back to your envision, if you had this, and I'm assuming your proposal would be that all towns in the county could then
access it.
Would there be a fee to those other
Well, I think that's a
municipalities?
question that the board of that entity would have to ask itself. You pay 8% to the Open Space Institute.
Right, because I don't want to do the filing fees, and
Well,
you know.
yeah, they do all that stuff. So maybe what you do is you say, okay, we're going to give everybody in the county a volume discount of 3 or 4%. Because essentially, it saves not a lot of money, but it's something. And it's
Because somebody does have to track. If we raised $1,000 and you gave it to this entity to hold, somebody's got to track where it goes.
That's right. But I am firmly of the belief that, and having been involved in these projects over the last 40 years, that there is the wherewithal within a department in this county to do that. It's not that hard. In today's world of QuickBooks and stuff like that.
I would support seeing that happen.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. Have we looked into whether or not there's other nonprofits that would want to take this on, that could basically perform this role? The County Historical Society.
Yes, that's what you said.
Well, here's the situation. My supervisor with the County Historical Society, they have one full-time employee now. I've talked about this briefly with the president of the Historical Society. Their office is probably 25 yards from my office. I see them on a regular basis. Without disparaging the Columbia County Historical Society, which was actually the place of one of my first jobs. I used to clean the Van Allen house when I was 12 years old. I will tell you that they have a mixed reputation in terms of complying. I think, do you mind me saying it?
Nope.
Ron, it's down to Stuyvesant tried to get them to take care of the monies for the train station.
No, that was actually the thing that we did with the Friends of Lindenwold and the town of Kinderhook and the town of Stuyvesant did one of those celebrations.
Celebrations, right? Yeah. And it went nowhere.
Yeah. But if the feeling is that they don't have enough staff, I think maybe part of the question is are we committing? Okay, it's not.
Can I also offer something up here? We have other 501c3s in Germantown, for example. Michael, I've set up 3 of them myself. They have a mission statement that is reviewed and approved by, when you form your corporation in New York State, and then when you submit it to the IRS, your approval of your exemption request, you got to stay on mission with this. And unless you're saying something like, okay, we're also going to take money and dispose of it for X, Y, and Z, it's a violation of your purpose. And when you file your tax return each year, you have to answer specific questions about how you used the money that you dispensed. And they ask you point blank, did you do anything that was outside of what you're supposed to do? And if the answer is yes, you need to attach an explanation. That's why charities tend to shy away from things that they're not
Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually did that with High and Mighty. Before we got their determination, we tried to attach with somebody else, and it was more trouble than it was worth. And fortunately, we finally got the determination. But I will tell you that what Supervisor Bowery said about Bury said about the mission statement is important, and that has been a problem. For example, that's why Friends of Libraries don't do historics events.
So, I mean, anybody could. I mean, you obviously could start this organization without the county, right? So one could create a 501c3 without the county's approval. So what is the advantage of sort of county-controlled 501c3, independent 501c3, and are we also at the same time committing some sort of staff time or infrastructure support for this future 501c3?
Well, a couple things. Number one, you're absolutely right. Any of us could go do this tomorrow. You'd have to have a board. You'd have to jump through all the hoops. My thought was that the thing to do would be to do it as a service available for the county as a whole and its component municipalities. Because I think that's what our charge is. And I think that's what the county historian's charge is to really make sure that this moves forward in an organized fashion. And I think that's what we are supposed to do best, is to do this for the benefit of our components. And it makes no sense to me to have
You're probably not going to have that kind of traffic where you have to have a dedicated staff to it. You might have a dozen donations during the course of the year, and then the charity turns around and just cuts checks.
That's it.
So we're not going to have a staff need or office space or anything like that.
Right. I guess would the finances be would that be done by the board, or would that be done by the controller's office, or
That's one of the reasons why we want to wait another month to figure out all those details.
So what I would say for example, and I'm not being difficult with any of the supervisors here, but when was the last time anybody talked about the Tobacco Securitization Corporation?
Well, no.
Yeah.
You did about 20 minutes ago.
I know, but prior to that, most people are aware of the existence of some of these things, and what has to happen gets done. I'll be happy to ask PJ Keeler but I do believe that you'll find that he has the wherewithal to do something like this without a great deal of difficulty. And I'll fill a form out. I've done them for other entities. I'll be happy to do it. Doesn't bother me.
I think it would be good if you could get the buy-in from a lot of the little ones so they could get rid of some of them in the county, but.
I agree. I don't think you'll see a lot of 501c3 little ones, but there's a need for this.
Yeah, there is. And that's why Open Space started doing this as an umbrella thing too.
Because they make money. They make money, and B, it helps. But you're.
Well, the other thing too, Bill, you're just asking the permission to go talk to our people to see if it can be done. That's
right.
So we're not even saying we're going to do it. We're just going to go see how it all work out.
But what I would do is rough this out in some kind of fashion. Say this is what it might look like if you folks are comfortable with it.
I think you should look at it. Do
And
that.
I would say,
Okay.
threw it out there that they would do some of these things at 5% rather than the 7 or 8% other people are
We'll save a
paying.
couple percent, and we're taking care of people inside the county, and I think that's what we need
Might
to
be
do.
easier to deal with too.
Yes, might be easier to deal with, right.
I think
Come
everybody.
back next month and tell us what happened.
All right, I'll be happy to.
Sound,
And I hope I'm first next month.
does that sound good to everybody?
He's gonna get his agenda in first. So
Tell him, Kelly, tell him.
Send it tomorrow.
Day of the
Send it
meeting.
tomorrow. All right,
Send it tomorrow.
thanks, folks.
Thank you,
Thank
Bill. I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Okay, I have to open it up to the public, see if they have any comment.
There is no other public.
Or no public?
Well, I mean, there's us, but
Well, I don't know if-
they have to email me. if
Okay.
they have any-
Well, it says public comment. We don't have any. Okay. Well, guess what? I think we need adjournment then.
I'll make a motion.
Need a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Take care.